Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be with you today. My name is Olivia Checkerly-McGonigal, and I'm an assistant director within the Division of Neighborhood Revitalization at the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. Today, I'd like to share what I think are three recent developments in the department, what I'm calling three big topics that represent a shift in how the department is thinking about and providing pathways to support emerging housing and community development practices. And these three topics are the first being past legislation and related departmental changes. The second, a sustainable communities framework update. And the third, a significant increase in revitalization funding for fiscal year 2025. Great, so my first big topic is legislation and the related departmental organizational changes. So as many of you know, in this past session, the governor signed three major housing bills into law: the Housing Expansion and Affordability Act, the Housing and Community Development Financing Act, and the Renters' Rights and Stabilization Act. This is the most comprehensive housing package of any Maryland administration in recent decades and will address concentrated poverty in our marginalized communities, reduce instability in our housing supply and affordability, and enhance rights for Maryland renters. In addition to those three housing bills, we have also supported additional changes and alterations to three neighborhood revitalization programs, as you see here, and these changes will make our programs more effective. Also, relatedly, last year, the department announced the creation of two new divisions: the Division of Policy, Strategy, and Research, which will lead on legislation, policy development, and data evaluation, and the Division of Just Communities, which will develop, implement, and accelerate strategies to lift up communities that have experienced historical and ongoing socioeconomic marginalization. All right. So my second big topic, and this is close to my heart, is an initiative to update the Sustainable Communities Application and Action Plan Framework. So many of you are our partners and know that Sustainable Communities is a geographic threshold requirement for our 7 state revitalization programs, and more on that later. It requires a 5-year action plan, as well as a geographic designation of a target area for those resources. We have almost 130 sustainable communities across the state, with over 40 on the shore, and they represent our historic downtowns, our town centers, and our main streets, among others. While the work is still preliminary, we are looking at ways to better integrate equity, climate resiliency, and public health into our sustainable communities framework. The centering of these topic areas demonstrate the shift in thinking more intentionally about people and its intersection with place. The framework has not been updated in many years, and so I'm personally excited to be engaged in this work that I know touches many of you. In the future, we are looking forward to presenting more information related to public outreach as part of this initiative. Finally, the third big topic to discuss is the increase in revitalization funding for the fiscal year 2025. The entire budget package for our 7 state revitalization programs, and that includes regionally based programs like the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative and the Strategic Demolition Fund Project 4 program. The whole thing is over $100 million and represents almost a doubling of last year's budget. So in the charts presented here, we can still see that the fiscal year 2025 capital budget allocation for those programs available across the state and including the Eastern Shore, such as Community Legacy and the Strategic Demolition Fund statewide programs, it still represents an increase, which is a high watermark for revitalization funding that is targeted almost exclusively to sustainable communities. Next, I wanted to go through just a couple project examples of what we can do with our state revitalization funding dollars. I did want to show a range of project types. And I think most importantly, I did want to emphasize that all of these projects are located within our sustainable communities. So again, places where we're targeting for reinvestment, and again, already represent our downtown, our town centers and Main Street communities. So the first year being the Eastern Shore Conservation Center, and I did want to bring this up even though it is an old project, just because the relevancy to the Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, but also personally because this was one of my first site visits. So I did want to bring that up. And the type shown here is catalytic pre-development, resulting in the reuse of large commercial buildings in town centers for economic development.
Just want to quickly point out,
Oh,
the
yeah.
desk is right next to this.
All right, the second project example is the Solcana Education Center at the Lawrence Wetland Preserve. This one is in Chestertown. It's located in historic Chestertown and provides educational and environmental stewardship opportunities for thousands of students annually. And again, is within walking distance of the downtown area and provides, again, economic opportunity. This is the Pine Street Neighborhood Market. So this is an example of bringing new development into an area that had not seen development or investment in some time, and bringing community goods to this particular community. Unfortunately, this picture is still under construction. Of course, belatedly, somebody sent me pictures of like the grand ribbon cutting, which did happen like a couple weeks ago or a month ago, but I think this just shows you kind of the scale of the project. And then finally, did want to give an example of an info lot, and in this case, it's for affordable housing. And then just to end, I wanted to leave you with this. Our round is open. So please sign up for a webinar. Also, go to our website and start an application. Deadline is June 26th. Thanks.
Thank you. Sure, please. Yes. Oh.
Sorry.
Hold on, we're having
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, this is, Clue from the Department of Transportation.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Aviva Clue, and I am the Strategic Planning Manager at the Maryland Department of Transportation. I work in our headquarters. We call it TSO. If you're familiar with MDOT, the Secretary's Office, in the Office of Planning and Capital Programs. And from an MDOT perspective, I could talk about anything. I could talk about lots from local transit. I could talk about bridges. But really what I wanted to talk about today is to give you an overview of MDOT. I know all of us are familiar with one piece of MDOT. Usually it's the State Highway Administration and our district offices on the Eastern Shore, or it's our lots, our locally operated transit systems. But MDOT is such a large organization, and we have been doing such a big effort from our long range planning perspective, and also our performance metrics or our strategic planning. And so I really wanted to talk about those updates, and then also how we can partner with you with some of our statewide programs and how you can partner with us. So this is a graphic that I use. I have been giving a presentation for many months on the state report of transportation, which I'll get into. But you can see that when we think about transportation planning at MDOT, it's not just state planning, it's our regional planning and our local planning. So MDOT at a glance, MDOT is a very large organization. We have 10,000 people. We have offices all over, and we are not just roadways. We are aviation, the port, transit, motor vehicle administration, your driver's licenses, your real IDs, your boating licenses, your boating permits, your trailer permits, state highway and the Maryland Transportation Authority. Those are our toll facilities and bridges. And we also have a budgetary oversight of the Washington area metro, the WMATA. But together, these 5 modal administrations and authorities, we all are under one mission statement. And we recently updated it. So I really want to lay the groundwork and just say our mission statement again, because you'll see these themes coming throughout my presentation. So MDOT is a customer-driven leader that delivers safe, sustainable, intelligent, exceptional, and inclusive transportation solutions in order to connect our customers to life's opportunities. In the last 2 years, we have added a couple words of sustainability, inclusivity. And earlier we heard Secretary Florida talk about inclusivity, and it does not just mean from an equity perspective, it's inclusive of everything. And so when we're thinking about these 10,000 people working in our regions and across the state, we're really thinking about all aspects of our transportation system. So we have 3 main documents that guide our transportation planning process at MDOT, and we refer to this as the State Report on Transportation. And we just do that because we have a legal responsibility to, because every January, the third Wednesday in January, we submit these documents, but we really have 3 documents that we update almost annually to guide our transportation planning process. We have the long-range Maryland Transportation Plan, and that really guides how we plan our transportation system. We have our 6-year fiscally constrained capital program, the Consolidated Transportation Program, our CTP. Many of you are familiar with that. We go on tour every year. You put your transportation projects in your priority letters, and that's how we get the state funding. That's how we invest in our statewide transportation system. And then we also have a document where we evaluate our transportation system. This is the annual attainment report. That's really measuring how we're doing. And all of these processes went through a major overhaul this year because we went through an almost 2-year process to update our long-range plan. We update it every 5 years. It has a 20-year vision. This is our comprehensive plan. And we had an opportunity with our new administration to really input a lot of these new and current trends and to make sure that we are building a transportation system that serves the statewide, but then also can be applied on a local level. Again, this is the state transportation department, so it is high level, but we wanted to make sure that all of our planning practices followed 5 guiding principles to help us make our decision processes and to support 4 goals. So the 5 guiding principles are equity, resilience, preservation, modernization, experience, and then the 4 goals is what we plan to do, right? We hope to enhance safety and security, promote environmental stewardship, deliver system quality, and then serve our communities and support the economy. And together, in the Maryland Transportation Plan, we have 75 objectives. So as I mentioned earlier, that attainment report, that ties into the Maryland Transportation Plan, and together all of these produce a vision of how our transportation system will serve Marylanders. So again, the attainment report, or the AR, is an annual document. Because we updated our long-range plan, we did a major overhaul of this attainment report as well. When you update a long-range plan from a DOT perspective, it triggers the need for an attainment report advisory committee, and that's convened by the governor. The members are chosen by the governor's office, and we really look at it to make sure it's matching not only the state's transportation planning goals, but also the governor's goals and the governor's new state plan. So some things that the attainment report does, again, this is an annual document. We're looking at this transportation system performance, system investment, mobility, and accessibility. But some noteworthy trends for this year are safety, transit ridership, accessibility, equity, and resiliency. And through the attainment report advisory council, we have 20 new measures. So those are like EVs and fleet conversion, CTP investments related to federal funding and serving overburdened and underserved communities, access to transit, jobs, and essential services, and asset management. Really, we're talking about the resiliency of our system. So this is a snapshot from the Maryland Transportation Plan. If you have been on the Smart Growth Subcabinet, you've heard it called the playbook. We really branded a sports theme. So if you look at it, it's a really nice document. But we went really heavy on the sports theme. So we call these a few game-changing projects and programs. I really don't want to get into the projects per se, but when we were thinking about this plan, we were thinking about multimodal, multi-jurisdictional projects and programs. And on the left side, you can see these statewide programs. And this is really what I wanted to dig into today, because we made sure that our MTP was supporting our statewide programs that we are administering on the local level. So I divided these into a couple buckets. One of them is active transportation. Again, this is just a sampling. We know that there are so many active transportation programs at NDOT, but some of the exciting ones that are happening right now are the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, or PSAP. So I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this one because it's building upon SHA context-driven initiative. And it's really looking at these dangerous corridors and what can we do? So there was a lot of outreach for PSAP. There's a lot of outreach on the district level. And they were looking at these corridors for vulnerable road users. And that didn't just mean bike and ped, but of course it means bike and ped as well. And there are currently 5 corridors being redesigned right now. And if you pull up this plan, it's a really easy website. There's a map. That's a great resource to use. And the other one is a huge effort that's going on right now at MDOT is the Complete Streets Initiative. MDOT's currently updating the Complete Streets policy, and this is enforcing SHA's context-driven initiative that I just mentioned with the PSAP and MTA's bus stop design guide. And we really want to think comprehensively. We want to establish a contextually nuanced approach to deliver active transportation improvement to support Maryland's Vision Zero, equity, and mode shift goals. And we are so excited to announce that we have a partnership with with Smart Growth America to do the Complete Streets Leadership Academy. And this is a technical assistance program, and SHA is piloting them they are working with 3 localities, and this is kind of giving them like, you don't have to follow all the rules, like let's be creative, let's have these areas to identify policy barriers, let's identify our infrastructure barriers to create these best practices. And the idea is that they will do these over the summer and the fall, and then they'll prepare a collaborative report by January 2025. So we can use that as a best practice guideline. And as SHA, they use the MUTCD, the manual on. Yeah. That was the test. See, we all know. We got it. Right, so all of these are coming together. And a lot of times I'm saying SHA specifically because that is our MDOT partner that has the largest footprint on the shore. We also know that MPA has a footprint as well, but that we are all working together. The next for active transportation is the statewide trail network. MDOT's currently preparing to update the 2009 statewide trail plan. We've scoped a trails master plan. We know that we have coordinated with the Eastern Shore Trail Network. We really want to build upon that engagement and energy because it's time. Out of the 2050 bicycle and pedestrian master plan that was also updated along with our 2050 Maryland Transportation Plan, one of the recommendations was to create a dedicated trail team at the Maryland Department of Transportation. And we really heard that. And this is our first effort. So we're looking at things of our rail banking policy. We're looking at our implementation efforts, and we're really looking for those long-term connectivity goals. That's what we're always thinking about, especially with our MTP. We're thinking about connectivity. We're thinking about the system as a whole by targeting investments in these parts. And so one project that I just wanted to talk about because it's happening now is the Frederick Douglass Rail Trail. So SHA recently completed the feasibility study. And so that's a rail trail from Easton to Tuckahoe State Park. And they're currently engaging with our partners and they're seeking funding opportunities. So we're really looking at creative ways to advance this project. And that is a great example of our state and local partner jurisdictions. And here is an example of one of our programs that has funding. Is the Ken Lampier Bikeways Grant Program. This is an annual program. The amount of funding shifts every year, but this year we have $2 million, and this is for locally initiated projects. So this is an opportunity for your community to apply for funds to fill missing links, whether it's within your bicycle network, maybe it's a last mile connection, maybe you want to use it to leverage federal funding. This is a great pot of money. And the applications closed 5/31. So if you need some help, we can get you get your application in. And I would be remiss if I didn't promote Bike to Work Week. It's currently Bike to Work Week. This is mostly a Central Maryland event, but we know that different municipalities and jurisdictions also participate. We found out that Salisbury University is having their pit stop, and this is a great way to get across the state. We're making sure that all of our MDOT leaders are dispersed at all these different areas. So there's music, games, of course you get your bike to work week t-shirt, but it's also an educational opportunity. We want to talk about safety. We want to talk about repairing your bicycle and just have fun. So we'll see, the big day is Friday, May 17th. So we'll see you out there. I want to shift away from active transportation and talk about some of our environmental programs. Electric vehicles are increasing so quickly, and we do not have the infrastructure in place to be ready for them yet. And this National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, or NEVI, is aimed to doing that. It's hoping to create a network of convenient, reliable, affordable, and equitable EV chargers across Maryland's designated alternative fuel corridor. Maryland just hit a huge milestone. We hit 100,000 registered electric vehicles. That is like such a huge milestone. I remember just a few years ago, we hit 3,500 and there was this big press release and we just can't compete. Okay, so this is great. So we'll put Maryland on a path of net zero emissions. We want to improve mobility, and we also can use these funds to match federal funds. We also have the carbon reduction program. This is to reduce transportation emissions. This year, Maryland was given $55 million, and that's part of a total of 94 over a 5-year span. This is in our climate action portal if you're looking for how to apply for those. And we also have the Protect program. So this is how to make our surface transportation systems more resilient to natural hazards. So this is very flexible too, like the other programs that I've mentioned, where we're looking at infrastructure improvement, community resiliency, maybe it's evacuation programs, things like that. And the last two programs I want to talk about are HUR and TOD. So HUR, we often talk about this during our CTP tours and our capital program, but they're highway user revenue grants. And so these are distributed from the Transportation Trust Fund, and they go to local jurisdictions to provide critical investments for the repair, maintenance, and other replacement activities for transportation facilities, again, in your. It's tied to the Transportation Trust Fund, so the funding varies from year to year, and again, that's why, at least during the CTP tour time, but according to law, we have some great news. HUR fees will increase by 20% in FY 26 and 27. So again, you can use those for local projects. And the last is TOD. So MDOT is actively promoting TOD as an approach to increase transit ridership, support economic development, and maximize the efficient use of transportation infrastructure. MDOT is also participating in or leading the Equitable and Inclusive TOD Act of 2023. The act has two parts. The first is the TOD designation will be by the Smart Growth Subcabinet, and the second is the establishment of the TOD Capital Grant and Revolving Loan Fund. So MDOT has dedicated $5 million to this, and the Smart Growth Subcabinet will help develop the criteria. And one thing I like to note, TOD does not just mean heavy rail. It could be VRT, it could be bus stations. We really need to think creatively as we're thinking about building density around these TODs. So I've mentioned some programs, how we can help you. How can you help us? You can help us through promoting these initiatives, through research and development, through data collection, mapping, all these GIS tools, through partnerships. We could not do this without you, and helping establish these relationships. So you feel comfortable coming to MDOT, you feel comfortable going to your local partners, so we can work together through grant support. MDOT can write you a letter of support. We can write you a letter of support. Again, engaging in our local partners, research, and even supporting others in going after local grants. And again, outreach, education, and engagement. All of these things we do together and helps build out our transportation system. Thank you.
Okay, does everybody want to stretch with me? We're almost to the end of the day, but this is the point where we all get sleepy. So I'm actually gonna try to engage you. I'm gonna run through a bunch of different resources for sustainable growth best practices. I feel like in sustainable growth, we talk a lot about policy changes. So we're looking at words for a lot of these discussions. So I'm going to try to show you some national graphics that help articulate how sustainable growth looks different that may be helpful in your communities, as well as Maryland Department of Planning does not have a lot of funding or regulation. However, as Tracy and Secretary Flora noted, we provide a lot of technical assistance in order to achieve better outcomes in our communities through planning. I have to say, it is really nice to be back on the Eastern Shore. I started my career in Maryland with Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, starting the Center for Towns with Secretary Day. So community engagement and planning is near and dear to my heart. So we're going to try to make this engaging. And to start out with a really great resource coming off of MDOT's presentation, Smart Growth America has a new complete streets policy framework. I actually think it's a really good general planning framework. If you look at the actions that they have, you could remove complete streets from the steps that they provide and really put in any of the related topics we've discussed today. So I linked that on the front. So as Secretary Flora noted, we're broadening from smart growth to sustainable growth, building on not only where we can serve, but how we grow and for whom, around 3 areas. So not just thinking about environmental sustainability, but also economy and equity. Many places have done this before. A good model is actually internationally, the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. The state of Hawaii actually used the UN Sustainable Development Goals as the framework for one of their recent plans. This probably looks all too familiar. And I know we've been talking a lot today about how current zoning does not support the types of communities that we want to see. This is a great video. I didn't want to risk trying to play it here, but it's actually a great video on social media, going back to TikTok. This one's on Instagram, of why single-use, single-family zoning is burdensome to local communities. It's by a group out of Florida called Streetcraft. I'm happy to share my presentation. And again, I think it would be really great to show at public meetings about how we build differently to accommodate growth and be more sustainable long-term. Equity is really important in the conversation. However, we have to figure out how we do it with the communities that need it most. So this is a graphic from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. To explain the difference between equality, which is a lot of times what we have been trying to do for those communities, rather than equity, which we need to do with those communities to provide everyone with what they need through an improved community space. My community design days and community engagement days at Eastern Shore Land Conservancy still come with me in my planning career. Getting communities engaged early in the process builds capacity and is an easy way to show potential changes that could come through policy and small area plans later. This is actually a Congress for the New Urbanism Award this year in a small town where they tried to show what potential zoning changes could allow for in their community related to housing. As you can see, these are very quick sketches, some done by community members. And then they tried to create maps that were common everyday language to explain the changes that they were hoping to achieve through the zoning changes. This is an example of, broader resilience and environment in sustainability. We have to think about so many things to reduce our burden on the environment and reduce costs long-term for these type of developments. Let it be greenfield or infill development. So this kind of shows the full cycle of, thinking about how we build, in our communities that reduces burdens on the environment and economics of our places. So again, another graphic, this one is from Cul-de-sac, which focuses on car-free communities next to transit. Again, looking at the value and the provided accommodations for a parking lot versus a walkable mixed-use neighborhood. And there's still quite a bit of open space in that community, which is so important to placemaking and a sense of community. This one I think is really important, especially because we have such few other transportation options on the shore, and there are people who have no option, and can't afford a car. I dealt with this as the planning director in St. Michael's, where community members who were working in the service industry could not afford a car and could not afford to live in St. Michael's. So we actually had a high number of those in the service industry that had to hitchhike back to Easton. So I think creating sustainable communities reduces our environmental impact, but then also creates places where everyone can thrive. So figuring out ways, I think, to diversify transportation options is really important on the shore, and also harder because we don't have existing mass transit, although we once did with the old train stations and rail lines that once existed. This is a really great report from Victoria Transport Policy Institute that was actually just recently updated a few weeks ago. And it includes economic estimates for sustainable growth impacts across multiple topic areas. So we know we've done a great job of land conservation here in Maryland, but we can reduce things like public infrastructure costs, which we've talked a lot about. And I know that impact fees are a huge part of discussions here on the shore. Reducing vehicle miles traveled, affordability for everyone, access to travel time savings, non-auto oriented opportunities, road safety, public health and fitness. We do see reduced obesity rates and asthma rates if people are able to walk in their communities, access healthy foods that are grown close to where they live, energy conservation, as well as community cohesion, addressing social problems and economic productivity for everyone. There's a lot in that report in addition to that chart. So Maryland Department of Planning, Programs and Resources, I wanted to highlight a few that kind of go through what we do, what we're working on, and provide you links if you were not already aware of these opportunities, building on what Tracy provided around local comprehensive planning and zoning processes. So as Secretary Flora noted, we have reinvigorated the Smart Growth Subcabinet, soon to be Sustainable Growth, and the coordinating committee of agency staff that work under that. The Smart Growth Areas Act requires the subcabinet to release an annual report on growth-related state funding in priority funding areas and outside of priority funding areas currently. We have the Sustainable Growth Awards, which I encourage you to apply for, even if you don't win. I hope that we can use these as models to show folks about successes in Maryland and how we're moving the needle, even if we haven't gotten completely there. So encourage as many submissions as possible so that we can create a database of sustainable growth case studies. Comprehensive plans, I just highlighted the link for you. Annual reporting, I appreciated the discussion from Frederick County about nothing from the state says you can't improve those processes in your community to work better for you, until we hopefully create a better model at a state level, and want to learn from all of you about how to do that. So loved hearing that you've used that annual report requirement to share and involve the community and make it even better. You can always report more things, create fun infographics about successes you're achieving. The state has a clearinghouse for intergovernmental assistance. It actually is a list of all state funded projects. So it's a really great resource to see what other communities are doing and where they're getting funding from. And then the Maryland Info Portal is a place where you can actually search for funding and technical assistance programs available all across the state. We do have the Maryland State Data Center and Analysis. There's a lot of great tools. They also do all of the census data collection in the state of Maryland. And Maryland Historic Trust is one of our few carrots and sticks. So definitely wanted to highlight both their statewide preservation plan, which was just updated, and their historic preservation funding through tax credits grants. And easements. Additional MBE programs, these are specific ones under our planning services that I thought may be especially useful on the Eastern Shore, giving resource capacity here. So Tracy mentioned the Maryland zoning checkup. I linked it for you. It's a really great resource, essentially as a worksheet on how to make potential zoning updates. We're currently working on a report from the Accessory Dwelling Unit Task Force, which is due to the state legislature June 1. So that should be out soon. And I know a number of communities on the shore have accessory dwelling units. It was something I worked on in St. Michael's when I was the planning director there to get passed. Housing mapping and data dashboard has a lot of information, multiple layers of data that you can look at. Local and state targeted growth areas and conservation tools. So looking at that growth and conservation in balance. Maryland Protected Lands Dashboard, which I know ESLC is very familiar with. And then the Snapshot Maryland, which is called a transportation planning tool, but again, it has many data layers available to analyze multiple issues related to sustainable growth. So where GIS resources may be limited, feel free to use these publicly available resources. So I wanted to highlight quickly the Sustainable Growth Sub-Cabinet Bill that Secretary Flora mentioned passed earlier this year, just to highlight some of these key terms and so that you can see them. Shifting from smart to sustainable growth, conservation to vitality, for neighborhood conservation to vitality, and incorporated references to equitable and resilient. So this is more of a statement about how that all works together. As Secretary Flora mentioned, it's beyond where we grow, but how we grow and for whom, and aligns with Governor Moore's priorities to make Maryland safer, more affordable, more competitive, and a state that serves by expanding opportunity and supporting families. And I'm not going to go through each one of these 12 planning visions. I'm curious if anyone in the room that doesn't work for Maryland Department of Planning could name all of them. But the important part of these next slides is that Maryland Department of Planning is currently embarking on starting the process of updating these 12 planning visions. They have not been updated since 2009. So we want to update them to incorporate this shift, this broader shift, but then also address community needs based on societal changes and hopefully make them more actionable and easier to get to these outcomes we're hoping to achieve. And they begin to lay out the framework for a possible update to the state development plan. Okay, I just flipped through